Jenna's going, Jenna. Yes, okay. Well, it's great to be here. And actually, we can have a full morning of this with some quite substantive papers, both in public and also public too. So, include anything else, suggest we make a start. If you haven't realised, Martin.
You want me to start?
Yeah, the Karakita.
Sorry,
Do you start with the Karakita?
we can.
Are you able to? I said this week last time, didn't I? I really
haven't got one
at all. We can do it Friday, but we have one. Deli's probably.
Deli's.
Deli, if you like to start. Sorry, I was.
Did I look a bit like a deer?
I share the mic, but I didn't share. Deli, are you got a random one next door if you want it?
I mean, I'm happy to adjust the air conditioning. So I roll.
He is funny man. Actually, I do feel it's not a standing. Nā mihi o te rā i te whānau e hui hui nei, kia tau te rangi Māori e, kia whakatapua tātou me nā mea e whakapono ana tātou haumi e hui e, tai e.
I think it stands, you know, you having a problem. Gary is the council we're missing. I sent an email last month to say, tough Bruce, I'm enjoying Fiji. So, I think that's pretty good. I'll move from the chair areas.
I'll second.
Thank you, Rika. Sorry, check. People able to stay for the morning or we've got to shoot through around to be here for the course of the meeting. I have to step out about 11:15. Okay, I think we're still going. Unfortunately, again, that's still one month actually, but we're still going at that stage. Thank you for that. Okay, well, we just add that Len needs to step out. That's great. I'll move those apologies. Through a second. We need a second. I'll move that. Those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, carried. I haven't been informed of any public forum. I think we have all the items in the agenda with the additional confidential matter circulated, which is on the agenda, so I don't think we need to move anything there. Are there any matters for today that of interest may come? I think so, that's fine. We have the minutes of our last meeting, which was on the 22nd of June, if you get long ago. So, I'll move from the chair that we said was true and correct. Do I have a second of secretary? Are there any matters of correction or accuracy that need to be raised? I did have one. Let's go to page 7. Actually, it involves my name. That's in vain. What involves my name? I have looked through them all. There's a paragraph, Donna, which says, I reminded the committee of the perspective of risk governance as noted in the audit report around services. I don't actually understand what that paragraph means. Even if I didn't have my own words, maybe public recording. So I just recommend we get rid of that paragraph. To be honest, it doesn't add a lot to the flow of the minutes, or indeed what was recorded. Just merely shown I ranted somewhere during the course of minutes. So unless there was any real issue, I mean, each of the individual sentences in themselves are important, but they don't link together as a paragraph, and I don't actually think in the long run we need that. The whole bunch of documents, concepts there. What's the paragraph?
I'm happy to.
Thank you, Terry. Well, I'll take it just, you seconded it anyway.
Yeah.
So are there any other comments on it people would like to make? So wasn't there a change of the motion? All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carry. That looks like sort of follow-up items on that, but I think there are, I don't think any, or indeed none that need to discuss at this stage. I must confess, sort of the door, a fair bit of staff time out with illness and bits and pieces. One of those includes Paku. It's reasonably serious health at this stage. So, Donna, you're holding the fort, I understand, on the situation. So, look, I do, if you had a chance, hopefully you can just pass on the committee's best wishes to Parker. He's been hospitalised, so let's just think of the man. He it was great to this last meeting. You'll listen today. But Don, you're a great substitute. So we're in your hands.
6 papers.
We're in your hands for the first. We're in your hands for the obviously the next 3 papers with and leading for health and safety. So if you could take us through the basic.
Sure. So the first one we've got is the risk report. And basically went to page 16, which is the updated strategic risks that you workshopped, and unfortunately I wasn't able to be there for that workshop, but my understanding is that we had a good workshop and we came up with some really good key strategic risks there. So those ones have been updated. The rest of it, the action schedule, you'll see been action on probably a few of them, apart from the only one that's still outstanding is the asset finder one, and we just needed a bit more time to carry out that action. And I think because the upgrade of the system, the asset management system. Anybody got any questions about any of the content in the report? I'm happy to try and answer, otherwise I'll be able to come back.
For our colleagues to answer, given we were all there, Don, so there's no worry. Peter.
As you look at the Microsoft middleware, that's not my question. Just want to see how you respond. I am concerned about cybersecurity, and I'm just wondering when will that assessment and what have you end up taking place? Because I think it's really important.
Yes, let's talk about that. And I think he has got it on his program. See it. Page 20. So I guess so it's great we do have to do it and we will be doing it, but just also so that you know that we do have a cybersecurity specialist that we have for our security, who are our basically service providers around cybersecurity, and they are a really renowned and reputable company in New Zealand, and they manage and advise us on all of our cybersecurity as well. So it's not like we haven't got this big hole. I think probably from my understanding and what I've spoken to some of my colleagues about, I think we are probably one of the councils that have really got a better handle on cybersecurity than some of our counterparts. So although it's a risk and it's always a risk, I don't feel that I feel that we are doing all that we can to mitigate any risk at this point. But I do get your point, Councillor Rebel, that we do need to get that other audit done. So Aura, they do audit us, so they audit us from a security perspective. They do penetration testing. We don't know when they're going to do it, so they send out files and say try and break into that system quite regularly, all that sort of thing. So yeah, there's a lot of work going on in the background to constantly try and prevent people from actually getting into our systems.
So your comments are reassuring, but I do think it would be really good to get that assessment done so we can actually see, hey, we are yellow or orange, whatever colour we want to be.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
I wonder if that's deep down, and I agree with you. Sort of like Ross never sleeps in this area. I wonder if things we have a sort of a short status on our security settings would be helpful, just to understand who we've got engaged and how it works into the system. Peter would make a lot of sense. I hear you. I appreciate that Parker and the team are working through these constructively, and this was something which I think would be fair to say to exercise this as councillors and let the members at our workshop with Parker. So what do I say, please, Mark?
Would it, be appropriate to, if we are having people come and talking about what measures we're taking to do that on public exclusion?
Absolutely, yes. The would be normal around council, for the cyber security briefing, indeed, any risk paper to be. Totally. Yeah, it's Terry.
Yeah, just austerity and affordability's popped up in here, and it does talk about the loss of three waters reform and the ability to equitably fund community services. Just some comment around that. Is that just waiting for where we stand after the 14th of October, or is that the reason is the three waters around community services?
Possibly not to answer. Unless you check the Eileen Scott. Oh, Eileen, thank you.
I was just going to say, these are the risks that you've identified in the workshop that you held. And so I guess I'd turn the question back to you. What were your thinking when you agreed that this was strategic risk number 4?
Well, the three waters is an unknown, but I don't know how it affects the community equity funding for community services. So I find it a bit confusing, that's all.
Oh, right. Okay.
It's interesting, so I look at just as off the top of my head, very particularly the point when I was reviewing the papers, my argument would be actually three waters, just three waters. You know, okay, there is a significant transition issue, and that's really covered by central government.
Yeah.
In terms of austerity and affordability, I think this is pointing towards, have we modelled and do we understand what are the possible scenarios, which we all know.
Waiting for.
We're waiting for the 14th of October to find out what that really means. My punt would be, if you're going to build, we need to have a sense of what is both the loss of debt and also loss you lose debt. Removal of debt off the balance sheet, in essence, but also the loss of income. Because for some councils it works one way, for some councils it works the other. I think.
There's two messages to take out of this bullet point. I think one is there was some discussion around the entity and the idea of there being cross subsidisation within the entity.
Yes.
And so there was discussion around that that's not guaranteed in the current legislation. And so that could lead to equity challenges. And there was also discussion about once the water revenue removed from the rating system, we're going to be left with a rating system that is quite different to the one we have at the moment. So there were also some concerns around the broader residual activities of the council and how the funding was equitably spread. So those would be my thoughts on that.
Thank you.
I don't know how this is what we are obviously recorded, but I think that would be able just to clarify those or rather add to those points. Very on that makes a lot of sense. Thank you, Martin.
I just wonder around the risk number 6 of climate change, if something might be put in there to reference the new sustainability and resilience committee. Oh, sorry, was that your comment? I would draw that and hand the floor to.
Oh, sorry, Ricky, I just missed your hand. Sorry, there you go, Ricky. You
No,
may.
exactly what Martin just. Oh,
Right, so we
Possibly.
recognise that as well, actually it's key mitigation, I suppose.
It is.
We're actually dealing, actually, you've got to focus on smart and brief through.
Yeah, I don't quite know how that can be incorporated in there.
No.
Well, it's an action, isn't it?
Yes, and through the chair, this is naming the risks and giving the risk description, risk impact. There's a whole lot of work that goes on and further that will have those mitigations and things over there. I don't know whether this is the right place for that.
This is not a report, but I mean, I'm looking at pages 18, 19 and 20, which is actually the feedback we gave through with Parker and management at that meeting. I wouldn't see any problem with under the middle column, which is councillor feedback on an open session recurrent matters. Get the committee up and running.
and just one small thing on that, we have 2 number 4s and no number 5s.
Oh, right. Terrible, we can't.
It was, wasn't
Okay, I can't count. Any other thoughts on risks? I did sort of warn Bruce in about 30-second warning, that I'm gonna ask the proposed Freudian question. Naturally, I can't fix that, so it's, on my mind will be on the second. You may be pleased or not pleased, no. Bruce, it is obviously an issue. I mean, see that, we have some challenges with both supply and wastewater. Can you give us an indication what we have done, if anything, thinking about awareness on the risk?
So through the chair, there's a very good question of shares from everyone. We do have 11 treatment plants around the district, so we do have what would you say, I suppose, risk spread rather than just having one plant. Mum and I did have a conversation about this yesterday, and I probably hand across to Mo to get into a little more specifics on the Steelers.
Sorry.
Steelers. Thank you. Happy to jump in as needed, but.
It's easier for us if you want to put it in the well. Welcome to the meeting, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So back to front. The short answer is that this top exposure for the environment is very minimal. The background with this previous building usually happens mainly the risk is with surface waters, and we have some surface waters plants. Dams, for example, good examples. These plants have been progressively upgraded, and I have spoken with the drinking water assessor this morning. He didn't have too many concerns, which was really good to hear. Martwang is the last plant to be updated on the drinking water standard. That is to be updated in 2024. And what he said to me is the way the Martwang plant is performing, there are a lot needs to happen before that situation. So he wasn't too concerned. The other plants have been updated in their running fund. And we have also done all of our water safety plans and submitted to town authority, like we have not come back to us with any concerns. When I spoke to the person that wrote the plans yesterday, he didn't have too many concerns either. But having said that, all of this is contingent on equipment breaking problem, because they all became.
Yes, as you say, what has to happen for crypto splitting you get into your plant, but of course that was the Havelock North example, this was the so-called sort of cheese, all the holes lined up. Yeah.
And the other learning from it, just out of interest, the way Prithvi and Jagya is measured in the country is through actually a surrogate test, is the turbidity in the water. So if we achieve a certain level of turbidity, which is required by the drinking water standards, that means those bugs have been eliminated. So that's how we measure it. That's why we are upgrading.
Great. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. Thank you. Very, very helpful. Sorry. Other questions you got? Come on. Good. Right. Are there any other points of the state we want to make on our risk profile generally? I'm therefore referring back to the earlier part of the paper. Just one, and it is a constant reminder that we are fairly sustained attack. So I'm looking at item 1. Councillors feedback, councillors to better represent staff of the community. And on a daily basis, I see attacks on staff from community members beating the drums about their particular issue, and there's nothing wrong with that. You're perfectly entitled to. Some of the criticism that I'm seeing is tips over a line between fair and reasonable and tips into unreasonable. I'm just conscious that us as councillors need to be fairly firm in presenting and representing factual information to these community members and making sure that the picture that they get is accurate, and essentially representing our council and representing our staff and doing that job out there, because it's going to directly into this risk of how our staff operate, psychological safety, social esteem, self-actualization needs of employees. So all I'm saying is that I remind myself on a regular basis, we have a role to play in that, and it's not a small role, it's challenging, but it's never really. So that one popped out when I thought, let's not forget our responsibilities in that area.
And it also, you know, that risk of staff recruitment and retention, if they're not happy in that role, then we're going to lose them to the private sector or to another council. So I think, you know, that is a major risk, finding the right people and holding on to them.
And I think it's fair to say that we've made really good progress in that area. And maybe gave some feedback a couple of meetings ago about how staff feel about their jobs and their council environment, and it's some good positive stuff coming through. But I just make sure that we keep tracking in that same direction. Thank you.
It was reflected on your comments, and I was just thinking about, I think it's that final bullet point that you're referring to, councillors need to better represent staff to the community. Was that it's our feedback, not staff's feedback to us, and I think we should recognise that. I just noticed, my sort of headline thoughts are, this is a really important one probably for every local government entity in the country. And how do we have a good, effective communication, internal communication with management? And I just note that on our agenda, we have a couple of matters coming up. One which I sort of call the vexatious policy on what's called unreasonable complaint policy, which does also about the need for effective internal communication between staff and council, so councillors can understand why a person may be deemed to be unreasonable. And I also note there are, I think this is just points that are coming up. I think when we get to the open paper on emergency management, again, there is a level of communication between and councillors and councillors knowing their role, etc., which again will feed into this sort of idea of what's our feedback, which councillors need to better represent staff in the community. So just keep that in mind. I think that's actually really important. One that we should think about as a factor in mitigating risk, because it goes back to your point, Ellie. People I know because they get tired of politicians. I also know it makes it away, but let's not go there at this stage, John. But it does go that way. Thank you, Lily. That's really, really helpful pointing. So look, just summing up the paper, I just wondered if we were to go back to page 16. Paku has given us sort of a colour indicator, the RAG, if you will, on these risks in the general risk profile of the council. I was wondering whether there was any sort of overview comment staff, or also elected members like to make about just the overall profile at this point in time. I don't think the colours have changed much since last meeting. I think there's a couple of things that struck me. One is the long-term plan process and capital delivery, which again you've got a paper on, and which must be, I presume, in your mind as you consider the long-term plan as you go forward. Another thing that actually also is on my mind when I look at this is, again, it's your point, Terry, the 14th of October is going to depend a lot on how these risks could not change. So I think that's reasonably useful. And the other thing, which is actually has affected us here in the sense that we've gone through Gabrielle, which is big on my mind, particularly for councils that have not been affected by Gabrielle, but we've got El Nino coming our way down south, which is actually the precedent that's been set for the government-led response to the issues of Gabrielle. I think in category 3 buyouts and it's almost the unfunded mandate that comes with that precedent that we need to think about. You guys are already in the thick of that, so I don't discount that, but I just so it's three things that I've noted that actually the profile is where it's at. It could be subject to change early for the time next. So I think
So you like to do comments on?
yeah, no, it's Got me, yeah.
Just, so this is the report as Taku, drafted it, you know, like
Yeah,
about 2 weeks ago.
that's right, yeah.
So when you start to report it a little bit further, I guess we're doing some reasonable recruiting at the moment, and part of that might be that it's down to the private sector, people are jumping back to councils. And I suspect also, after October 14, we might see some exodus from central government back into council, so that won't be a bad thing. Because there's been quite a big draw from local government into some of those ministries with the ambitious programs that they've had. In terms of the weather event, we are coming through the recovery reasonably well, and my observation is that the recovery work with the external agencies is actually working really, really well. It's probably still at the cost of BAU. BAU is still feeling bumpy, whereas the recovery feels like it's going reasonably well. Other point I'd say, the other risk we have is the capital delivery program. While it's an annual risk and we worry about it each year, this year we can clear the debt a little bit in recent space. But what we're seeing is that that space may well be filled up with unanticipated grant funding for quite a lot of projects. So we may still have a challenge with that capital delivery, despite the fact that we try to clear some space for it. These things will come to light in the coming weeks and months as we find out various things that might get funded. In terms of the climate change side of things, it sort of relates to weather events. We've also started planning, and we're going to bring something to council around planning for fires. With the change in weather, it doesn't seem fair, does it? We go through fires, hoping we don't get locusts.
Yeah, it is biblical.
It is a little bit. So Gary will be coming to talk to councillors just to talk a bit about background and what the risks are around wildfires, how we're going to be prepared. Given the rain we had in the last 2 days, it feels a bit strange to be talking about fires, but here we are. So that's probably the main points.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I just want to make a quick statement too, that the impact statements that come out of government all the time really add a lot of extra work and change to our environment. And I'd be pleased to see when they start stopping, because each time they bring out an impact statement, it changes the direction we're going. See that through the different legislation that comes through. You know, if it comes from government as a worked piece of information that goes through legislation in the different sectors, it's fine. But when you get an impact statement come out from the government, I find it difficult to change track halfway through it. I find it really awkward. So I like a bit of steady ship and some really good, but there's quite a few of those policies have been shelved or parked and things like that. The money that's gone behind them and the confusion it leaves, I find that really difficult. So it's a direction.
Terry, can you give us an example? No.
The impact statements that come out from government.
Yeah, so is there an example of one that you've
Yeah, I have. I was trying to get around, but we've had several. Around the, I suppose, the freshwater modelling, I suppose, around the consenting and planning and things like that. These, I don't know, the planners would tell me better, but we hear these discussions all the time. What I hear when talking about it comes out with they make a statement that people have to then actually introduce, you know, implement. So yeah, I need to find some. I'll give you some examples of go for some.
No, I'm just thank you. I think it's I'm just intrigued to understand a bit myself how they directly affect council operations. So I wonder whether Aileen can throw any more light on that, just certain that resource planning, resource consent and planning area, if you noticed.
My observation is that local government is always subject to pending doom and gloom and change. And it's never been any different. At the moment, we do seem to be more pieces of change looming. So really, I guess you kind of just got to get on with life until change actually happens. I think probably it's created a little bit of uncertainty, and the reform programs have drawn resourcing into the centre. But other than that, it's just another level of uncertainty as we go forward.
So find a balance between
Uncertainty is difficult to live with all the time.
leaping to attention every time
Yeah.
and finding a balance between how actually. Thank you. Thank you, Terry.
Yes, Martin.
I find it difficult to imagine that whether we get a new government or the existing government, whether there'll be any less changes in policy. Because if a new government comes in, they'll want to get rid of a whole lot and we'll get vast quantities of reports and suggestions and things. So yeah, I think it's the nature of the beast, and you know, we have to be guided by what we have as our values and our focus, and work with it.
I think we can't control what's happening at a nationwide level, but I think our comms that go out to our district is really important, that they feel confident that we're, you know, business as usual is happening aside from cyclones, and that we are, you know, agile and can react to all of those possible reforms from central. Because I think people are quite worried in the communities as well. You know, quite a few people I talk to are concerned about what the changes are coming down the pipeline, the current ones, as well as what might happen with a change of government. So our comms and how we reassure our communities is really important.
Thank you for that. Appreciate that. Any other comments I'd like to make? That leaves thank you for getting the conversation going, and it does believe that current responsibilities, there's a lot of change. And I'm very conscious, and you may well come back to this as we get through some of the other reports. Having a comment that it's difficult to get back to BAU in this environment. So I wanted to highlight that section, so you mentioned BAU, actually, you know, it's not like be overstating the word, but doing BAU is actually difficult in the current environment, which is I find it really disconcerting on the hard stuff.
I think our comms team did do a really good job around letting communities know that we've been in a recovery mode and reassuring them that, you know, they're getting on top of that. Yeah, I think there is a lack of confidence in our communities, and it's probably a nationwide at the moment.
Chair, if I may, having said that, I think our team, our staff,
Oh, absolutely.
keeping this on track, and it really comes to life when you read that emergency management. Oh my God, what they dealt with and how they managed to keep the train on tracks. They really like the side of the school.
And a final point here, I think that with everything we're facing in recovery, and I use the term let's not waste a good crisis, we're actually using recovery to let's better into the future. So there'll be a positive outcome in BAU.
Can we move to the recommendation, please, which is one that we received, or two, we approve the revised strategic risk list. We can move that. And actually, could I just put a third one there, please, Donna, which is that the committee requests a status update on cyber security. I was going to put that at the next board meeting, but you advise us as what is possible, because I would appreciate that. But I think we should add, Peter, your initial request that we get an update on the status of cyber security. Is that okay? Yeah, good. Thank you. Right, then I think your hand was up to move it. Peter, your second. Thank you very much. You get the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Yes, carried. Thanks, Donna. You're not off the hook yet. Sharon, support, please.
Thank you, Chair. So just before we get into the report, I just want to make a little change to the suggested resolution about the policy. Sorry, I missed that. It says approves. The committee actually doesn't have a delegation to approve the policy, but they do have a delegation to recommend to council. So could we please just have that resolution updated?
We recommend to council they approve revised formula. Brilliant. So any comments?
It brings you to the next bit. So that's a full policy, isn't it, for you to have a look at. You was a review against the OAG's guidelines, and an example that was given at that time on the Ministry of Justice example. Our policy was pretty good. There was just four points there that Paku has listed on page 22 that, policy. The other thing to note with this report is, which Chair has already alluded to, is the unreasonable complainant conduct policy. So that policy has been as a management policy. So it's been approved by management, but we thought it would be really ideal to bring it to you, to the Risk Assurance Committee, not to approve it, but to receive it so that you are aware of it and aware of its operation. One of the, and in that policy is whenever we enact that policy, I will bring a report to you at the next Risk Assurance Committee meeting to actually inform you of that. Yeah, answer that question.
Yes, and it's one of those, I mean, I raised this in terms of the comment, the context of these comments about staff management, staff governance, communications, one of those areas where I use the collective we deal with the same person. So it's good. Thanks for that, Donna.
Just one more thing to just focus you on, and that's the internal audit program. So segue into staff not being able to do BAU. This is one of the things that Pakeha has been struggling to get to. So we are looking at resourcing and how we're going to be able to meet the audit plan and actually get some of these underway. So that's something that an action that Pakeha and I have got when he gets back, to actually look at how we can get some traction on some of these planned audits.
Appreciate that. That's very helpful. It was something actually in since last time attracted our attention to it. So, any questions here, Terry?
So that audit to be done by November, is that right?
Which one, Terry?
The one that Donna's talking about with Pakeha. Is there a time frame on that?
And the audits won't be completed by November, but we definitely will provide an update back to you at the November Risk and Assurance Committee on how what we've put in place to be able to get movement on traction on these audits.
Right. So no penalty in of that. There's no issue. The audit people are happy with the weight.
These are internal audits.
Oh yeah. So it doesn't affect the external.
These are the audits that Pakeha
Has to do.
He doesn't have to do, and these are audits that have been identified within the business that we want to look at, something that's given us focus. And this audit program actually was your internal audit program as well. So these priorities came to you in the previous committee meeting, and you approved this audit program. Which 22.
Yeah.
So Terry, if I could something to speak on Garth, any external audit will be interested in our internal audit program. But Donna's point is the most, this is actually our assurance program, not being conducted as a, in a sense,
part of the
process. That's negative, but put it this way, to have those reports and the assurance that they will give us will be really valuable. You look down those lists.
That's something the external audit.
We as a committee should want to see these on behalf of council. So I'll take on board the point on that you have to go back to the drawing boards. We actually look at how to do it, and we'll look forward to seeing how that's going. Any other questions? Yes, Ben.
So one comment and one question. On page 21, the bottom of page 21, the unreasonable complaint conduct policy. Very last word, 2 words in that first paragraph. I don't believe we have unreasonable complainants. We have unreasonable complainant behaviour, which is the way it's always referred to everywhere else. But I think we need to be really careful. We don't label people. We label their behaviour, but don't label people. And that report, when we talk about unreasonable complainants, that's unlikely. So it's just a comment there. Just the Audit New Zealand, the comments there on page 23, talking about deficiencies in bag charges and solid waste revenue system. It would seem to me that the possibility of having fraud related to tags is more likely than having fraud related to bags. So there's a couple of, that one there, so there's a question there, have we gone through a robust process to kind of think about where there may be fraud related tags, whatever that might look like. And the second thing is the revenue. So one of the things that we've discovered this year, obviously you have Gabriel and we don't have as many bags, and that's impacted the revenue. My question relates to the revenue calculations that we've done with the $8. And, you know, we've had a discussion about the margin for retailers and so on. And as I began to think through it, I wasn't quite sure, how do we get our money? Where does our money come from? What other margins get lost on the way through for the production of tags, etc.? And have we actually got a credible revenue model associated with the tag system?
So through the chair, I'm going to hand that question over to my colleague at the back here. We have had some discussions about the tags and yes, if you could come up and over. That would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. You could address the question, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, through the chair. I'll answer the question in two parts. First, in relation to fraud with tax. The fraud part actually comes from misuse. As we saw recently, the way people affix the tags to the bins. So the way the tag works is that the bin is lifted and the lid is open, the tag rips apart, so it can't be reused. I think there were people who figured out how to loop the tag so when the bin gets lifted, the tag doesn't rip off. So that's one of the challenges we face. We have a lot of educational programs on how to rubbish them. That's really the main risk we learn because it does affect revenue.
Yes, it does.
And in terms of the tags itself, so the tags are applied directly from waste management to retail, so we don't handle the tags. They place an order, they're registered on their system, it's like overnight to one of they order 1,000 or 5,000 or whatever, they pay them directly. But the manufacturer of the tag is not waste management, it's actually environmentalist, one of their suppliers, because their patent on the tag is Western Bay of 20 District Council. They are the ones who first introduced the tax system in the country. So we have bought off their patent. So that involves paying some royalties and other things. So all of that, so paying for the print design, the royalties, the other payments associated with getting a tag, roughly about 70 cents. 70 cents per tag, roughly. And then about $6 comes. So it's sold to retail at $6.76. So the retailer pays the whole lot to waste management, and out of that they keep a cost.
Can I interrupt just momentarily then? We're not public excluded.
So just need to limit,
Because I do have.
just need to limit the sensitive information.
Okay. The revenue for us comes directly from waste management through the sale of tags.
Okay.
Yep. I have detail, but I think you ask me from committee. So I was quite happy to share.
Sorry about that, my wife, but I try to answer the question, but we
And I do have the answer, so I told them, yep, that I would like to do it.
happy to be in conversation. Please, thank you for advice. It did strike me, Mo, in looking at this, because it attracted my attention as well, mainly because I haven't seen tags before, but this seems to put the primary risk, particularly around tags, with the contractor as in contrast council.
The supply of tags.
Yeah, but the issue with the model is that people learn in the way you have said to misuse the tags. So in fact, one tag does multiple tries. Yeah.
So you don't have to say you should like what we have with bags, like stock take of bags, because we paid for the bags from the stock was.
That's what I'm saying. All the risk for the contractor. Okay. Good, as a thank you. I'm just conscious that we need to be careful of moving East area.
Just noticed that Gary said in Auckland, somebody walks in front of the truck and checks the tags, but that was never a discussion here, was it? That somebody going ahead, picking the.
That was after hindsight. Yes, they didn't have anyone with it. So we get the benefit of the now, I mean, it without.
Okay.
Model has been introduced now. We just raised the question, is it a sustainable model from a revenue generation point? We're in the first year of implementation, and am I correct? That's fine. Okay, right. So it would be reasonable, I think, to assume the committee will be interested in both aspects. Is it generating the revenue? Because that's actually important to our financial strategy. And secondly, I say the forward risk, or the risk use of those tags would be of interest. So I think it's something at an appropriate point. It feels like a quarter or a 6 months. Sounds like the start of the new year it would be useful for the committee to understand those two matters. John, you had a point to
Yeah, just a couple of things. I'm not sure whether that actually a fraud or a theft by misusing those tags, but that's not what I wanted to speak about anyway. The unreasonable complainant policy, and I use the word direct not purpose, Peter. First of all, I was pleased to see that information was going to be shared with councillors as to who had graduated to the hit list, because we are dealing with the same problems, probably with the same people out there in the community, and some of us have that background. Because when people fail to get what they want out of the council, they will invariably come to the councillors, and so it's just good to have that information. The other thing I was going to just ask a question about is 3.4 in the policy, which is a periodic review of expenditure approved by employees and sensitive positions will be carried out by the risk and assurance team. We haven't done that in the past, to my knowledge. Is that a new?
My understanding is it has been our puppy here, but my understanding is that he has just recently conducted a review, an internal review. No, it's really what it is. It's a review where people and working for in positions of, I guess we are broad for occur. It's actually having discussions and having a workshop with them, and mostly it's in the finance team as well, and also in the asset team, and having that discussion on with them on areas that they see that provide as and what controls, and we people will look at it and what control, word what controls need to be. That's
Thanks.
I think it's possibly valuable to note in that context, John, I approve Lee's expense claims in the sense of expansion. So I'm keeping my video on. Spare council resources. Years ago.
So I just want to flag with the committee on regional planning policy and general health and safety. A question keeps popping up as I read through this. And it's a good policy, it's comprehensive. What I don't know and what I need to try and get my head around is how we protect elected members in that process. And this could be something that is an LGNZ issue. It could be something that is the responsibility of the mayor, but then how does the mayor go through a process of protecting elected members? Really good, strong stuff for making sure staff are looked after. Is there a gap there in the way that elected members who are subject and often the first line of fire when it comes to these individuals or groups? How do we do that if nobody else is flagging them? Yes, John.
Yeah, I know I've already said this yesterday, but I'll repeat it again. I think that we have a duty to protect staff, and we have good policies in place to do that. Elected members are at the front of the pack. Put your hand up for public office, and I think it's like an antenna that will bring in the lightning, and you've got to live with it. And that's just the way of the world. It may not be perfect, but you stand for office, public scrutiny, public criticism, you're going to get heaps of it.
Right, Rika.
Thank you. Yeah, I sort of had a comment similar to Len's, and just sort of asking, I think this is a good policy and I can absolutely understand why we would be, it's unfortunate that we need to implement it, but I can absolutely understand why. But I had a question around, does this extend to elected members? And I'm happy to hear that there will be reporting back to this committee, but within that 6-week window, and if a person is not sort of getting the answers or things that they want, they will move to their elected members quickly. And it's a bit of a time lag there. So I just want to flag that as well. And whether you guys have thought about that.
I'd like to respond to Councillor Morris's comments.
Go for it, Len. I knew we were going to.
It's bold, Councillor Morris. No, I think it's fair. From where I sit in my role as the mayor, very, very great duty of care and responsibility towards my team. And what I want to know is, do I have the resources to be able to help my team? And at the moment, I don't know how to do that. So when team members come to me and say, hey, we're getting beaten up out there, I don't know how to support them in a way that makes sure they go home safe at home. And I have to say, it's got worse over the last.
So I just witnessed an Australian politician getting I think it was a cream cake in the face last night on TV. Yeah, which was disgusting. But it will be dealt with by the authorities, no doubt. Yeah.
But before the cream pie in the face, there are a whole multiple levels of stuff which does harm and damage potentially to elected members. Many times across lines that are not acceptable. So I want to know that we have ways to help and support.
I mean, Len, I just want to endorse your comments. Absolutely, because I think that much as I would really love the playing field to be the same, being an elected woman versus an elected man is a very different experience.
Sorry, Ben.
Being an elected woman versus being an elected man.
Okay.
Like, for example, I have been yelled at in the supermarket while shopping with my child present.
Not.
So, you know, and we did discuss this yesterday, and I really want to make sure that whatever we're doing is making sure that participation from a wide variety of people in the community is an attractive option come election time. Because the message that I'd really hate to go out is stand for office, you're going to get abused, you're going to be the first line of defence, and all that you'll get for standing, and with no disrespect, because I think you bring a lot to the table, will be ex-policemen who can handle that, and people who may be slightly more timid but have a lot of different skills in a lot of different areas will be discouraged from standing. So, Len, I support what you're saying in terms of supporting the councillors as a whole to be able to do their job without fear of intimidation, or with recourse for when intimidation or unruly behaviour occurs. Thank you.
I take your point, Robin.
Yeah.
Thank you, Robin. Through discussion, can I just think I'd like to draw us a little bit closer to the recommendation now, if I could. Honestly, one comment. I also would be happy to support the resolutions in terms of the policies. I think being good. Just one thing, Donna, which I just want clarity on, though, on page 35.1, we say no complainant member of staff shall attempt to investigate except for policy. I think I understand what that means. I want to be crystal clear that actually we should know who the investigator is. I don't think the member should be involved in an investigation. I don't think any staff member should be involved in an investigation other than the one. So I just want to make certain that there is no, in my view, there should be no ability for any member, for instance, to actually investigate.
Wouldn't want to be.
No, and I think it's big, I just, so I think it's a sense that when I read it, I thought, oh, it's an elected member or any staff member might undertake an investigation. I don't, that may not be intended, but I would like clarity that that is not.
Agreed.
But it's even as a question mark, not as a question mark, but just as a comment as we go towards the resolution. So we receive the assurance report, we approve the revised forward policy, we recommend it.
A couple of things. One minor on page 35. The flow chart, the bottom right hand corner, missing is a phone somewhere. Allegation against mayor or elected member. There's no, the decision tree is left off the decision things. See on those arrows? Yeah.
Right, it doesn't say.
Oh, page 36.
Yeah.
Okay.
Second thing was on page 31. What is the mechanism? Do I need to know what is the mechanism? But I guess the investigator needs to get unfettered access to whatever information. And one, I would assume that means that the person needs to get access to information in the IT systems. And I assume that therefore means that experts need to be, and are those experts therefore staff? And therefore, do we have a risk then that staff and potentially a low level in the organisation finding out that the mayor is being investigated or whatever it might be? How's that situation protected? I suppose the question.
So through the chair, it is a good question. It would be, if I think if we were to conduct something like that through our staff, we would probably not use a staff. We would probably use an external person. We would also, it would be at the highest level of the capability in the team that would, you know, do that research or look at that research. And sometimes we can actually ask for research without actually saying what we need it for as well, which we have done in the past. So we can actually, we can keep a very closed and tight circle around that information.
It's actually unavoidable because you've got to have the person with the expertise that knows the system, that knows the data to actually do that kind of thing. And these policies, we have done it for low level staff, not this kind of stuff. Yeah. So we've done it at a low level and staff have done it without fully understanding the context in which they were looking for that information.
Right. So protecting the anonymity of the person being investigated is a kind of a.
That is paramount.
Yeah. Thank you.
In any investigation, actually, not just if it was just election measures, but even the investigations. So.
Last question, man.
Yes, around the unreasonable complaint conduct policy, and I agree with Councillor Rebel who said before about behaviour that needs to be flagged rather than the person themselves. But on page 45, I just wonder what others feel around there's some examples of unreasonable lack of cooperation, and it talks about information being presented in a sporadic, nonsensical or disorganised manner. And I just sort of wonder about the word disorganised. I imagine that a lot of people really have no idea how our organisation is set up. And I'd hate to think that could be flagged as an unreasonable complaint because, oh, they've said that's the rates thing, but actually it's a different policy. And I know it would probably be a whole lot of other things would have to be met, but I just worry a little bit about that, the word disorganised. But everyone else might be fine with it.
So through the chair, these are just examples. Like there could be a whole raft of other, and there would need to be a whole raft of things that happen. It wouldn't just be one occurring one. If you read the highlighted text above that, that sort of explains the level that they would need to go to be able to.
Indeed, but I mean it's an example that's in the policy, so in some ways it's part of the policy. But that's just potentially just me.
It's a good point, actually, Mark. I think so, because they should attract my attention. Persons receive many complaints over the years of my role. It's often behaviour associated with being disorganised. It starts to make you concerned about people that can't get their arguments together, to be honest. And it's broader. I take your point. If I'm facing, it's simple, I'm a lawyer now, I'm not. The information is disorganised. I think there is a first step for the council to check with the complainant as to what they're trying to say.
Yeah, indeed.
But it's often in that case, you suddenly realise that you may well be dealing with a person that's less able, but I need to be very careful in saying that. And I don't mean that with anybody, by the way, here in Thames Coromandel. But it is often the case. It possibly can stay, but I think you're right, that the person has a genuine complaint, that they can't write it in an organised way, shouldn't be automatically then characterised as an unreasonable.
And I would seriously doubt whether in fact our staff would discriminate against someone on the grounds that they can't put an argument together. But yeah.
Yeah, okay, any other comments? That's helpful. I'll suggest that you take on advice to how it's, whether it's kept or how that's perhaps worded. Don, anything else? Seeing we have other comments that would like to move to the recommendations. Okay, can we move to recommendations, please? If we receive the report, we recommend to council they approve the revised fraud policy and we receive the new unreasonable complainant conduct policy. Thank you, Dahlia. Second, thank you, Peter. Debate no, I'll put the motion there. Those in favour, please say aye. Yes, thank you. Appreciate that very discussion. I hope that's been helpful time. Right, we've got the health and safety then, I think, please.
So through the chair, for this report, I just point you towards two items, and the one is on page 61, and that's the work that's been undertaken and proactive work in relation to the nasty night hazards. And also page 63, which is the incident dashboard. There's been no major incidents reported in the last period.
Any questions or comments about
Positive. So I'm interested to know how the figure, the out of cycle budget request.
We're not quite there yet.
Not quite there.
We're on.
Health and safety.
Health and safety. bit. All right.
I have.
No, I have no questions.
On the health and safety, okay, right. Look, it's fun.
Do we have it, with the council internal comms, do we have anything like, sometimes we turn up at a workplace and it's, 127 days since any sort of incident. Do we have any sort of a dashboard thing like that go out to staff? I mean, it's pretty cool that there's been no major things reported in the last period. Yes, no?
We don't, but that's good. That's a good point.
But if it's going to take a lot of staff resource to do it, then I'm dead against it, but.
I know through the chair, I do know that our health and safety people that they are working, they do split half their time between obviously with staff and also with our contractors as well. So and we just recently got a resource in that area where we had a vacancy previously. So and I know they are looking at at their work program and also how they get out and socialise that. So what you raise is a good point.
And it just sort of keeps it in the front and centre of people's minds, I think. Yeah. Cool.
Thank you, Martin. Yeah, other comments? Since there are none, it's a report, so can we move to the recommendation, please? My recommendation, which is that we receive. Thank you.
Yep.
Rita, thank you, Robin. Motion on those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Right, before you go, Peter, let's see if we've got on the outside what you've got first. Donna, comments, please.
We're over halfway, Donna. Hold on. Short.
And so, I'll take the report as read so that you understand what this report is about. So just a general, just a quick update is that Audit New Zealand is seeking a cost recovery from us for the 21-22 audit. There were some efficiencies from both the audit team and also some work, additional work as well that was required because of there were some delays in receiving information, but there was also additional reviews required. Like if you recall that we had changed our asset revaluation reporting date. So we went from the 30th of June to the 1st of July, which you wouldn't think would be big, but what that means is there's actually 2 revaluations instead of that 1 year that Audit New Zealand had to audit. So that was something that we hadn't been planned. There was a number of a few things with some of the performance information and some of the asset revaluation work. I think from a advisor perspective, this is what's happened here is also one of the fallouts, I think, of having, the amount of staff time that have been called away on recovery as well. That's played a big part on this. When we looked into it, we've just recently done some work around actually recording the hours that staff have spent, and to date, we've got 5,000 plus hours of staff time that's been spent since the event, and that's not including the event, that's after the event, and that's also not including obviously the additional resources that we've got in to help with the recovery. That's just purely our staff that are dealing with stuff. So there's a number of reasons. There was a whole lot of reasons why this occurred, and I think the fact that we had that delayed audit. Unfortunately, we then had the cyclone, and then we had to audit the actual audit, as we were coming through our response phase to that cyclone. There's a whole lot of reasons why this occurred. I'm happy to answer any questions, and we also got Carl, who's in the room too, who may be able to provide some answers.
Thanks, Peter. Yes. So I'm just absolutely not give us an amount or anything, but I'm just curious as to how we arrived at a figure of 48,000, which seems to be 30% of the figure. Why is it 30%? Why isn't it 0? Why isn't it 20%? Why is it not 50%? Just was there some negotiation? Was there some science behind it? That's all my question.
Yes, so through the chair, there was some negotiation and some science behind it. Yes. Yeah. So Audit New Zealand came up with. Sorry, what's it?
No, that's the way. So
Audit New Zealand did come up with some methodology of how they had to calculate that. We had some discussions with some of the negotiations around that.
Thank you, Chair, Councillor. So, I mean, at the end of the day, we move some hours and you spend time on something else, and you spend more time than what you budgeted, and you can't spend that time somewhere else. You need to recoup some of that time, so we did provide council with a detailed breakdown of all the additional time spent, and also spend lots of time with Donna and the team to make sure that they can prevent a lot of these things going forward. In the new annual report cycle, some internal checks and balances on the annual report before we get it, so that we not for quality assurance, we have very expensive quality assurance. To do that.
So I'm not questioning there's an overspend, I understand, and I think that's entirely understandable. It's just how we you know, I mean, it'd be fantastic if you just wrote off the whole lot. Didn't give any contribution, that was great from our point of view, but we've ended up with a suggested figure here of 48,000, and I'm just, why is it 48,000? Why is it 25,000? If we could do something with the other 23.
So through the chair, it was a calculation of hours. It was a calculation that audit did of hours that was spent on some of the issues, some of the things that we could relate back to, you know, the reasons why we went over. So they calculated it based on issues from their side and then the issues that we found from our side, and that's how they came up with it.
Right. So I think what I'm hearing is the 48K fairly represents the issues that we created for Audit New Zealand based on the fact that we had a cyclone and all that sort of characters. That's.
Yeah, sorry, quite yes, that is correct. I mean, there was quite a negotiation and I was pulled in, if I can put it that way. Chair of the risk committee on your behalf. So I think it's fair to say there was a meaningful negotiation. Peter, and this was where the number said, I agree with you, 25 would be a much better number. 0 would be the best, but I think I think it's fair to say, Carl, we pushed back. We weren't entirely happy with the service. So it has been a genuine negotiation, but we have also reached the point where we are accepting that there was a level to which we created work for New Zealand. So we agreed on. I've got Martin and then John.
I think it's John first.
Oh, sorry, John.
Yeah, that's fine, Bruce. Look, I totally agree. That I don't want to pay any money at all. But if we are in some way responsible for having audit run over in their hours, then I think we've got to step up and pay it. What I would like to ask is, how are we going to pay it? Out of cycles coming from retained earnings, or what are we looking at here, guys? Where are we going to find this money? Any ideas?
That's addressed in
Now, did I miss that? I didn't see it.
I think it's on one page.
page 65, sorry.
Page 65. Okay, well, the answer's there. No one needs to answer it at the table, but yeah, I just know there's a lot of money that we can calculate the spending.
It does impact on what you take with you, you know, they go, Mark, question please.
So on page 65, under point 2, discussion. The first bit says was due to commence in September. It was delayed until March 2023 due to auditor shortages. So just to throw a grenade into the middle of the room, is it fair to say that if it hadn't been delayed, we'd be looking at a doubling of, I think, from 170 to 350 something? And that auditor shortage, why are we getting stung? Admittedly, for only 48,000 of that, why are we getting stung for something that wasn't our fault? Sorry, just I feel the ratepayers would be saying, why on earth was the audit twice what was quoted? And as that audit was happening in March, we'll be keeping an eye and saying, hey, this is way more than what it was quoted back in.
Ollie Carl. So any fed Carl that started $315,000 worth. But he never asked us to meet $315,000 on the basis that half of that roughly was his inefficiency. So in fact, the negotiating position that we started from was substantially less. I'll be honest with you, Carl, I don't know why you actually started 315,000. I'm not interested in your inefficiencies, but the point is, the negotiation wasn't at $315,000. It was actually, it started at a substantially lower amount. Carl, you got a comment you make? It's a grenade, darling. Yeah, I don't think the bearing of would have got had any result on the cost. You can't take that as a multiplier. You can apply the same amount of effort and vigor in this period of time. I think we'll just compound the effect of staff availability and resources being trying I think throwing everything at it to get the audit done at the time that was proposed is always going to be a challenge. Getting it done in April and done before April.
The follow-up question, was there a component of the overrun additional time at overtime rates or whatever? Is that a fair question? If everyone was rushing to try to get it done in a shorter time period, that maybe implies that people were working overtime and were getting charged overtime rates.
No, standard rates.
Right.
I think in that you need to reflect, we were in a very uneven position that we had to deal with this audit after the statutory deadline, 31 December. That's when it should have been signed off by. While we've had to reach an agreement with Carl over additional fees, we need to put pressure on both Carl and ourselves to get this audit out of the way. Otherwise, we'll still be dealing with the audit. I mean, that's wrong. But we would have been late and we couldn't have filled the time. Because of all the other things that Don has outlined in the past that have been affecting the finance function. So you're always in a balance between the two. Yes, Don, the question, is that still relevant?
About the retained earnings.
No, so you've
I've now found it on the report. Yeah, I see where it's coming from.
So Carl, if I, through the chair, if I may, the fact that the auditors were here when we had staff trying to assist with the audit and also trying to deal with storm events, if that had an impact and we can relate that back to storm events, the question, and it might be one that Aileen might be best answer, is there access to recovery funding that we can apply to this $48,000, or is that completely on our ticket? So I don't know if anyone has gone to view.
So through the chair, it's something that we have discussed. And we did look at it with funding that we had received for recovery, but the funding that we got for the recovery, we could have spent that over now. So we have to think about the priorities, I guess, and how, what that funding was for. And how we use it. I think yes, definitely we had that funding, and we didn't have other things that we had already earmarked for it. I think we probably could have made a case for some of it.
But it's too late now.
It's not too late, no, but it's
in terms of external funding that was closed.
There's the recovery funding that we've got, we've got planned, we've got planned programs in place to use that, and that wasn't included in us. So we don't really have the spare funding available to apply to something like this.
So I'm hearing Donald say we've got priorities. Can we actually look at our priorities, or is it too late to do that, Donna?
So that's the work that Stephen Town is doing on our recovery. There's the whole lot of work going on there, which, yes, I think that you would.
We might have missed a boat.
We did look at it, but.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I just wondered if the priorities could be rejigged, because that's a significant amount of our.
I think at a governance level, we've been asked to sign off on the outer cycle funding, where the funding comes from. I just wondered whether that was an opportunity, whether we could be covered by recovery, but essentially at a governance level, we've been asked to approve or not. So
does audit do installments?
I start.
Comment on recovery funding, but I mean, the fact is the recovery is going to cost us more than we've got. So, we can charge this up against it, but that's it's like, squeeze it somewhere else,
Bill, this is, I mean, as you know, from the government, this is highly operational.
Yes.
As in contrast to directly recovery. The core which Bob's outlining and Carl's outlining some changes we've made in the way that letter on page 66 is the 4 points, which have affected the amount of time that we had to see Carl had put in. So that it's highly operational. It's the logical place it would come out of, and as you said, it's just, it's which hand does it come out of? It's going to come out of.
I don't, Bruce.
I think that's
Just when you're caught in the trap, you look for exits.
yeah, if the government was prepared to pay an additional amount, that would be nice. But as I said, I think from their perspective, they're saying, no, not like Bruce, that's operational actually, but yeah, the thing normal is a lot of time spent for probably again. Okay.
Just a question about resolution 2. Do we need to have where it's funded from in the resolution?
Yes, good point.
I recognise that some of our other resolutions for out of cycle have had the fund from which the money is coming.
Isn't that a council decision? Recommendation.
We're recommending the council that they accept this funded, and I think we put at the end of it funded from.
From retained, so that when council receives it, they've got all the information.
I think I agree.
I feel like we shouldn't move, at least through any other comments, we shouldn't move to the recommendation, which is that we receive recommend approval. And funded from.
I'm happy to move.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Liam. Any other discussion? Being none, I'll put the motion in. Those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
That's yes, carried. Thank you. Well, don't go away, Carl. We got to stay there for the next couple of items. That's possible. I'd like to get through before break from CP. The proposal for the 23-25 financial year.
Let's see what the proposal is for the next 3 years. Just want to bring attention to, normally we would have brought this letter to the committee, who then would have a look at the letter and then advise the mayor just to sign it. However, due to the timing of the letter coming and then the timing of the committee, and then also needing to get this signed so that we can start the next audit without any delays. We instead provided the letter to the chair, and he reviewed it and gave a recommendation to the mayor. So we're bringing this back to you now so that you can just to close off the process so that you can actually see the letter and see what it entails.
The comments, Sophie? Yes, ma'am.
I'm under page 71 of the estimated audit hours. So got 810 budgeted in 2022, and the actual 2022 was 959. Although we know that it was actually more than 1,600 hours, of which Audit New Zealand's absorbing some. How confident are we that, in fact, the 2023 budget is going to be 1,032 hours? And being aware that that's actually a 20% increase on what was budgeted, or 25% increase on what was budgeted for 2022. So I'm just really unhappy about, and there was a lot of stuff in the media about Audit New Zealand's the kind of creep of audit, and I think schools are going to get slammed very soon with increased audit requirements. And I think the average member of the public just wants to know that we are being appropriate with their money. And it just worries me, again, this is almost a mandate from government, as Terry was talking about earlier on, about these things just keep creeping and creeping and creeping. And I just wanted to put that out there for discussion.
How confident are you that 32 hours is the right number and we won't face any more bills? Because that's critical. And I've been writing a number of letters back to your colleagues saying, you've had a chance to reset, you've had a chance to up your rates. By the way, the primary increase is the recovery rate moving up substantially, as in contrast to the hours, the rates, the key colour. Although it's not 222 hours, it's a chance to reset. And you will always hold us to our performance, but
Outside of that, surely this is the, you will be no fees.
So I think if all goes well, yes, it should be adequate. If there are delays or unexpected issues in the financial statements or the performance information, that will always impact our ability to finish the audit before time.
We wouldn't accept any negotiation of additional fees. We've been told at the time. Bottom line.
We've had, I think, very good and robust discussions with council, and it's probably into the next point on areas where we want to see significant work and thought go into, especially the work that was done on the affected assets that was impacted by the weather events, as well as additional funding received from central government that was administered by council. And we've had, I think, very good discussions today to put management into a position to get those figures into the financial statements in a way that we would expect it to be.
Any other comments for Honourable Carl?
Yeah, just quite a quick one, really. So being organised and being ready for you is important to make sure this works. So we have to get our ship in order to, if you come along, we don't delay you. Is this what you're saying, to keep that numbers, let's go?
That's it, and I think I don't want to speak on Donna's behalf, but they've put in a number of processes to do some quality assurance checks over the financial statements, the supporting information that goes in, including the performance information, what stands behind it, is that ready for audit and the information available, and then also the availability of key staff members during the audit, make sure that we get the information flow as we need it.
Yep.
At the end of the day, Bruce, we have no options. Have you got another option apart from what's sitting in front of me?
That's why I recommended the land that he signed.
Where's the alternative?
There was a challenge here, and I just want to respond to it. Actually, Carl, the approach of the office to setting fees this round has created what is a strained adversarial relationship between ourselves, I mean, sector job, not just the environmental, and our auditors.
Yep.
And yet, just as we've said in the previous paper, our internal auditors do to us, so should our external auditors. So I think it would be fair to say, and we'll come to that with the next paper, but Donna, you and Hayden and Carl are trying to rework the relationship as well, so that in fact we have an effective working relationship. I do think there is a real challenge to deal with people about actually things. I mean, he's saying he's reacting to a requirement from Parliament that all costs associated with audits is covered from the entities that the office audits. And in effect, the fee that stands at, essentially year 2, 2024 is market rates that are covered. Unfortunately, this becomes a substantial barrier between a better relationship with our external and yet I'm conscious that we need to be very committed to having a relationship that we really work. The trouble with this is it's hard to get it work feel like paying so much.
Like just one last comment. I commend Carl for sitting up there in front of us today. You have sent some strong messages, Bruce, when you've been talking to Carl. He is only the face of the organisation, and we take that on board, Carl. Inside, I'm feeling quite annoyed, but I appreciate your position.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, John.
So, as you pointed out, I think what I'm hearing, this is a reset. This is going to be a watershed time change in the relationship that we are. From my point of view, I feel like I'm swallowing a dead rat, but because of the cost. But one of the outcomes of that is we're going to have a fantastic audit. We're not going to end up going over that, and it's going to produce a new budget, a new relationship. I don't know if they ever do a league table of audit fees per council, population, whether that happens, but if it does, I hate to see us at the top of that table.
We can get information. I mean, I've got other engagements I'm involved in. There is stuff that Carl can supply. Might be useful, Carl. I've seen it quite frankly at Waipara and other places where teams Coromandel sits relative to local authorities, maybe just help.
Yeah.
It won't change the number, by the way, but it's okay. Martin, final point.
Yeah, so at the LGNZ conference, was there discussion around audit fees? Because I've heard that they'd called on central government to take action to reduce those council audit fees. Did anything happen as a result of that? Because the auditor general office is independent of the government. So presumably the local government minister can't intervene, but is that as far as it went, or is it
The
ongoing?
last one we went to was specifically on future for local government, so the short answer is no. At the AGM of LGNZ in Christchurch, I don't remember anything specifically at the AGM, and I certainly wasn't part of any of the breakout sessions or workshops that I'm aware of, although we were not able, nobody was able to go to all of them.
No, but I think it was included in some of the discussions I had around things that central government mandates us to do. Big costs to small organisations to fulfil central government requirements. So auditing was mentioned in some of the breakout groups that I was in, but no recommendations or motions or anything passed.
Right. But I think the reality is it is a meeting by the sector.
Sorry,
I think the motion, I'm not part of the local government in general meeting, but I was part of some of the committees that agree with the remit. It's a meeting of frustration. Rather than actually something that can be realised as substantial change. I want to reflect. We need the institution, the general. We need to have the federal presence. I'm not certain Delegat agrees it's an unfunded mandate, because actually we want it.
Yes,
We want to be accountable effectively to our community. And the only way we can do that is by having the external audit. The challenge is at what price? And that's where I think that Lean was more a venting of frustration.
That's just what we're doing the remit here, if that's helpful.
I think we're getting past that, to be honest. Thank you.
Thank you, like.
Righty, can I move? Oh, sorry, Lee, there's one point. Just one last request, if I may. And as you'd be aware, there are a small number of councils in this country that are consistently subject to storm events, weather events. We are one of them. So if there is some allowance flexibility to work with our team to try and make sure that the timing, this is tricky, timing doesn't sit right in the middle of us trying to do BAU, which includes the audit, and deal with weather events. If that has an impact on functionality and cost, I know our staff would appreciate it, we would appreciate it, but it's an ongoing challenge. Right, can we move to the motion which is simply as Donna has said we've received rather than approved because of the nature of. So Martin, are you?
So do we receive it and then council approves it, or by voting for this, are we saying we're happy with the letter?
Yes. Yes, and it's our role. I mean, this committee, one of the committee's roles is to maintain the relationships with the government. But we are received the advice, being signed on the basis of essentially, and the proxy was through me, advice from the committee.
I'm happy to move.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Peter. Put the motion, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against. Do you vote need a break? You want to vote against them? You want to and you'll vote against them?
Yes, please.
I was too quick, sorry. So I did put the motion. Martin's voting against. Was there anybody else voting against? Okay, thank you. Do you vote need a break or shall we deal with matters that will probably take 10 minutes, get through?
Deal with it.
Deal with it? Okay, we can deal with 3.3 but Carl, you please.
Yes, so through the chair, normally at this time, I will be bringing you an annual report, a draft annual report to review and provide feedback for the feed into the audit. Despite our best efforts, we haven't been able to provide a draft annual report. Again, this is seems like it's feeling like a bit of a stuck record talking about BAU and what staff have been involved in, but this is, I guess, it's another effect of that, of not being able to have this on time. Also accumulated with the fact that our audit was brought forward at the same time, so it was actually very, it was a culmination of things that have led to us not being able to have the annual report ready for audit and ready for this meeting. And so what I'm proposing is that, given the timing of the next audit, which is 30th of November, what we would like to actually have the annual report signed off before that, I'm proposing that that I circulate it, that we circulate the draft for you once we've got it to state and to provide feedback so that you can feedback back through into it. It's not ideal, but we're not going to have another opportunity for a meeting for you to be able to pass a resolution.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Donna. So if I just summarise, the statutory deadline is 31 October. The last 2 years, we've operated under a dispensation, it's code related of and the impact on the human resources of 31 December. So we're going back to the statutory deadline of 31 October. And the advice and the reasons, and it's not a stuck record, it's the reality. We've had a number of times today about the challenge of BAU, meant that we didn't put our hand up early. So my hand was involved in this early to Carl and his team, that actually 31 October was a stretch too far. So it does mean in receiving this report, we are breaching a statutory requirement to complete our audit or our annual report preparation and audit by 31. I think it's entirely defensible, and I think we will say that in our annual report. To be honest, and I don't know, and I mean, Carl's again cooperative in recognising, Audit New Zealand recognised the situation and have adjusted their resources. What I do want to reflect is in receiving this, we will have to acknowledge that this time we had breached the statutory deadline. There is no penalty at that point. I don't want to lessen that. I suspect Carl's going to report us too hard. We aren't the only one, by the way, to be honest. There are a couple of others for various extenuating circumstances. If you go past 31, they know that at this stage. So I think quite frankly, it's a sensible thing to do. When I was consulted, I understood the situation. You should say the correct very real reality that actually the organisation is stretched and can't make it. Right, any questions, comments that people like to make? Just a clarification. So, page 77, local government act 2002. Right, okay, fair enough. It's to LGA. Peter, you've got a comment?
I was just wondering if Aileen has a view on this.
Yes, I do. Nobody likes breaching statutory requirements, and I find myself a little bit allergic to any breaches like this, but I guess in context, you've got to look at the cyclone, the 8 weather events that we had, and have a look at the other councils who were relying on special legislation to get through. If all we're doing is breaching by a few weeks, actually we've done pretty well, given everything we face. So I guess when you think about it in that broader context, I'm still slightly allergic about the breach, but it is what it is, and it could have been far worse, and we could have been relying on legislation and some other things to get through.
And I think that's, I go back to my point, Peter, that's the story briefly that we tell as to why we're reporting late to our community. I agree with you. I mean, we shouldn't, that's why I've raised that we're declaring the statutory breach period. I don't want us to be in any uncertainty. But I think that in reality, to recognise the position. Rob, do you? We're okay. We're happy to. Can I, Martin?
So presumably we're confident that this delay is not going to cost us any more money?
So through the chair, we have I've been keeping a really close contact with Carl, and to be honest, it's also one of the considerations for us delaying was the fact that if we knew we weren't ready, and it would be difficult for the auditors that the audit in the manner as they had planned without us having the full financial statements there, which could have led to them spending, I guess, some hours and some inefficiency. So that was also a consideration that we spoke about and make a decision to review it.
And I noticed in the report they have actually been able to, they've been doing some work in the background anyway. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sorry to be in this, because it's the third party in this relationship, not this week. I think from our side, we committed to building a relationship, keeping the relationship there, having the regular discussions. We're going into the family and we're going to do the payment, moving into the LTP. So it's the pressure on staff is going to be there and is relentless going forward. I think that there are avenues available to you with the LTP in terms of legislation that has come out. And I think we must just be aware of the council to not just to comply or die. You know, that we look after our staff, we look after the well-being, and we discuss the options that we've got available and keep those in mind. As we said when I came with the draft focus areas, you know, if there are areas in the performance where we know it's going to take more effort to get it right than to qualify or express a modified opinion on some of the things, let's talk about it. Let's get it out there. It's less effort, less as one staff to get that in there. So it's just to be really pragmatic about how we approach the audit, how we go through things, how we look at the LTP, what do we know, what can we do, what's there for us.
Good comment.
Okay. Can I move to the resolution, please? I just want to suggest an additional one, Don, sorry, so having effectively received. I think actually this is an important point. Like they said, we are breaching the deadline. I think we should also include that this paper be forwarded to council, that they're aware of forecast. Yeah. I'll move this computer for signature. Second. If the motion, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. Can I suggest that we take a break? Probably how much? Well, in fact, I'm behind time. It's quarter of an hour. Can we be back in the room at least sharp at 11? Great. I will sort of go. But thank you for the effort. Very much. It's been really